Young nurse Alina had spent the last 12 hours rushing through the overcrowded ward, but her heart still felt strangely calm. She'd always believed that kindness wasn't measured by strength, but by choice, and today, she made the biggest one of her life. When the hospital announced an emergency case needing a kidney donor, everyone froze. The patient had no relatives, no friends, and no time left. Alina didn't think twice. She stepped forward, signed the papers, and whispered to herself that saving someone she'd never met was still worth it. She had no clue her world was about to flip. When she woke after the procedure, a dull pain tugged at her side, but her first question wasn't about herself. It was, is he okay? The doctor smiled, calling her a rare kind of brave. The patient, they explained, was stable but unconscious. Alina nodded, feeling a relief so deep it made her eyes wet. She didn't ask for a name, or status, or gratitude. She only hoped the stranger who carried a piece of her body would live a life big enough to make the sacrifice feel meaningful. She believed kindness returned, even if quietly. Everyone in the ward whispered about the mysterious patient in the VIP recovery suite. Rumor had it he arrived in a convoy, escorted by security, and that the hospital president himself approved every detail. But Alina ignored the noise. She preferred quiet deeds over loud tales. Besides, she wasn't allowed anywhere near the suite. Donor and recipient separation rules. Still, something tugged at her curiosity. At night, she'd pause outside the restricted corridor, wondering what kind of man carried her kidney now, and what loneliness had pushed him so close to death. On her third day back on duty, Alina noticed an unusual number of executives in suits climbing the stairs. They didn't look like ordinary visitors. They moved with a purpose only people used to command possessed. She shrugged it off until a stern nurse approached her with surprising urgency. "The patient. He asked for you," the nurse said. "Specifically you." Alina's brows shot up. She had never met him. How could he know her? Nervous curiosity bubbled inside her as she followed the nurse down the corridor she'd been barred from until now. The room didn't look like a hospital chamber. It looked like a calm corner of a luxury hotel. Standing by the window, weakened yet striking, was a man whose presence almost filled the space. His eyes looked tired, gentle, and stunned all at once. "You're Alina," he murmured, as if confirming a miracle rather than a person. She nodded, confused but polite. "I'm glad you're recovering," she said quietly. He gave a small laugh. "The first in months," he later admitted. "You saved my life," he whispered, "and I don't even know why." His name was Adrian Vale, a name Alina had seen on news tickers, financial reports, charity galas. A billionaire CEO, apparently feared, admired, and deeply alone. His empire stretched across continents, yet not a single person had stood willing to save him. Not anyone from his family, not business partners, not past lovers. When he learned a young nurse had given up an organ without hesitation, something inside him cracked, the cold edges softened. But Alina, humble and unaffected by status, simply smiled. "Life is life," she said. "You deserved a chance." Adrian insisted on thanking her properly, but Alina shook her head. She hated attention, especially from powerful men who thought gratitude required reward. "Just get better," she told him. But he wasn't used to people rejecting kindness, or rather, rejecting the form of kindness he was accustomed to giving. Every day he requested updates about her condition, and on nights he couldn't sleep, he reread the tiny handwritten message she left on the donor form. "If my life can extend yours, let it be proof humanity isn't gone." It haunted him beautifully. As the days passed, Adrian requested to see her again, not out of obligation, but out of a strange comfort he felt in her presence. Alina hesitated. She didn't want to get tangled in the emotional storms wealthy patients sometimes carried. But something about him felt different. Broken, yes, but sincere. When she entered his room for the second time, he was sitting upright, a hesitant smile on his lips. "I feel like you're the only honest person I've met in years," he said, voice almost embarrassed. Alina chuckled lightly. "You're exaggerating." He wasn't exaggerating. Not in his world. Adrian explained that his near-death experience stripped away illusions he'd lived with for decades. Power meant nothing on a hospital bed. Wealth couldn't buy time. And loneliness, well, that was a price he'd been paying silently long before his kidneys failed. Alina listened without judgment, her soft empathy drawing him out like a confession he didn't know he needed. When she finally stood to leave, he said, "Can you come again tomorrow?" She paused, then nodded gently. Something warm lingered in the air. Their conversations became the quiet highlight of his recovery. She told him stories about stubborn patience, about her childhood dream of helping strangers, about the nights she cried from exhaustion but still showed up to work. He told her about the pressure of running an empire, the betrayal of people who loved his status more than his soul, and how his world had felt painfully empty. "Maybe you just needed someone real," Alina said, half teasing, half truth. Adrian looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something like gratitude mixed with wonder. Every day, he seemed more alive. The doctors credited medicine. Adrian credited Alina. She didn't know he'd begun timing her footsteps in the corridor, recognizing her laugh from across the ward, noticing the way her kindness didn't fade even on her worst days. One afternoon, he removed the oxygen tubes himself, insisting he felt strong enough to walk. When Alina rushed in, ready to scold him gently, she found him smiling like a mischievous child. "Just wanted to prove I'm improving," he said. "You overachieved," she muttered, fighting back a grin. Despite her growing fondness, Alina kept a respectful distance. She reminded herself he was a patient, a recovering one, and she was a nurse bound by ethics. But feelings had a stubborn way of blooming in places they shouldn't. Adrian sensed her hesitation but respected it. Every time she left, he whispered a silent promise to become someone worthy of the life she gave him. For the first time in years, he didn't think about boardrooms or stock markets. He thought about her smile, her selflessness, her voice telling him to live better. When Adrian was finally cleared for discharge, hospital staff buzzed like bees preparing a royal send-off. He ignored everyone and looked only for Alina. She found him waiting near the exit, holding a small envelope, not fancy, not expensive looking, just simple and sincere. "This isn't money," he said quickly, sensing her suspicion. "It's something else." Inside was a handwritten letter, shaky from recovery, yet steady in emotion. He thanked her for saving not just his life, but the man he could become because she chose kindness when the world chose apathy. Alina was unexpectedly touched. She had seen wealthy men express gratitude with diamonds or checks, but never with vulnerability. "You didn't have to write this," she said softly. "I wanted to," he replied. "You're the only one who's given me something without expecting anything." She slipped the letter into her pocket carefully, like something fragile. Before leaving, Adrian hesitated. "Can I see you again?" "Not as a patient," he clarified, "but as someone who owes you more than words." Alina's heart tugged, but she wasn't ready to answer yet. Weeks passed. Adrian returned to work, and the world welcomed him back with headlines and paparazzi. But despite the chaos, he couldn't shake the absence he felt the moment he left the hospital. His board noticed he was different, calmer, kinder, almost human again. Meanwhile, Alina resumed her shifts, pretending the world hadn't shifted for her too. She kept his letter in her drawer, rereading it when long nights wore her down. Each word reminded her of a man trying earnestly to rebuild himself, piece by piece, with her kindness as the blueprint. One evening, when Alina finished her shift, she found a familiar car parked outside, sleek, black, and guarded by two unobtrusive security officers. Adrian stepped out, dressed simply, almost as if trying not to intimidate her. "I'm not here to sweep you away in some dramatic gesture," he said, raising his hands. "I just want to spend an hour with the person who changed my life." His honesty disarmed her. The exhaustion she carried melted into something warm. "1 hour," she replied, but her smile hinted she didn't mind more. They walked to a small tea stall near the hospital, a place Alina often visited after shifts. Adrian insisted on trying whatever she usually drank. "So this is your secret recovery elixir," he joked after tasting the strong, sweet tea. They talked about everything and nothing, laughter blending with the street noise around them. For the first time, Adrian wasn't a CEO. He wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man sitting beside a woman who made him feel alive again. And Alina wasn't a nurse tonight, she was simply herself. As their conversations grew deeper, Adrian began sharing pieces of his life he'd hidden even from himself. The loneliness of being admired but never known. the pressure of running a family empire built on ambition rather than love, the ache of realizing he had no one who would mourn him beyond press releases. Alina listened with patient warmth. She didn't pity him, she understood him. Maybe life gave you another chance so you could rewrite your story, she murmured. Adrian looked at her gently. Maybe you're the chapter I was missing. Though feelings blossomed, Alina still feared their difference in worlds. You're someone people look up to, she said one evening. I'm just me. Adrian shook his head. You saved me when no one even showed up. You're more than anyone I've ever known. But the fear clung to her. Not because of him, but because she'd seen how love tangled with power could destroy people. She didn't want to be swallowed by his world. Adrian sensed the resistance and promised himself he'd make room for her, not the other way around. In the following months, Adrian reorganized his life, not to impress her, but to align with the man he wanted to be. He donated to hospitals anonymously, increased support for medical staff, and started initiatives for patients with no families. Alina began hearing stories in the ward about a mysterious benefactor helping people in quiet, life-changing ways. She had no idea it was Adrian until one day she overheard him discussing plans with the hospital director. When she confronted him, he only smiled softly. Not everything I do needs to have my name. Their connection deepened naturally. He visited her on breaks, brought her lunch on night shifts, and listened to her stories with genuine interest. She found herself looking forward to his presence, feeling less guarded each time. One night, while they watched the city lights from a rooftop near the hospital, Adrian said, I used to think being alive meant being powerful. Then you showed me it means being connected. Alina didn't respond immediately, but she reached for his hand, letting their fingers intertwine. That small gesture told him everything he needed. Their relationship wasn't easy. The media speculated, people whispered, and some colleagues judged. But Adrian shielded her fiercely, not by hiding her, but by honoring her. If anyone asks, he told reporters once, I'm lucky she even talks to me. The world was stunned. The ruthless CEO now spoke with humility. Alina smiled when she saw the clip. Not because he praised her, but because he wasn't afraid to show vulnerability anymore. The transformation wasn't dramatic. It was slow, steady, and rooted in gratitude stronger than admiration. One afternoon, Alina was called to the boardroom, something that never happened to nurses. Nervously, she stepped inside to find the room decorated with soft lights, flowers, and Adrian standing at the center, holding a small velvet box. Before you panic, he said, chuckling, it's not what you think. Inside the box wasn't a ring, but a necklace shaped like an anatomical heart, one half gold, one half silver. You gave me a part of your body, he said softly. This is just a symbol. A reminder I carry you with me always. Tears pricked her eyes. She wasn't someone who cried often, but the thoughtfulness struck her deeply. Adrian stepped closer. Alina, I don't need you to promise forever. I just want to walk wherever life leads, with you beside me, not behind, not below. Equal. His voice trembled with sincerity. She touched the necklace delicately before fastening it around her neck. I don't know where this will go, she confessed, but I want to see it through. His relief washed over him like sunlight. Then that's enough, he whispered. Months turned into a quiet, beautiful rhythm. Adrian kept his promise. He didn't pull her into his world, he built a new world they could share. Alina balanced her nursing career with the whirlwind of being close to a man constantly in the public eye, but Adrian never let fame overshadow their simplicity. They cooked together, argued over silly things, and found comfort in evenings where nothing spectacular happened. The man she saved had become someone she genuinely cared for, not because of his wealth, but because of his growth. Then came the day Adrian was scheduled for a major press conference, one that would broadcast to millions. Instead of announcing a new acquisition, he spoke about humanity, second chances, and the nurse who had saved him not once, but twice, first physically, then emotionally. He didn't expose her identity, but his words were raw. Someone taught me that life isn't measured in power, but in the people who hold your heart steady, he said. Watching from the hospital cafeteria, Alina felt a warmth she couldn't describe. After the conference, Adrian arrived at the hospital, breathless and excited. He found Alina in a quiet hallway and reached for her hands. "I don't need the world to know us," he said, "but I want you to know I choose you, not because you saved me, but because you see me." Alina felt the final remnants of her fear melt away. She leaned into him gently, letting the moment speak for them. Their relationship wasn't a fairy tale, it was real, imperfect, and built on something stronger than fate, choice. Years later, when people spoke about Adrian Vale, they no longer mentioned the ruthless CEO. They spoke about his compassion, his philanthropy, his transformation. But he always said the true story began with a young nurse who gave away a piece of herself expecting nothing in return. Alina continued her nursing career, proud, grounded, and deeply loved. Together, they built a life where kindness wasn't an exception but a foundation. Whenever someone asked them how they met, Adrian would smile and say, "She gave me her kidney, and I gave her my heart."